So today we're talking about snake venom. If you've always wondered what snake venom is or how it works, well, this is a video for you. So let's get into it. Let's paint a picture. Imagine you're a snake and you're feeling a little hungry. So you slither around in your environment and you see a rabbit in the distance. So the rabbit's pretty fast, but if you can bite it and inject it with your venom because you happen to be a poisonous snake, you can kill it and enjoy the meal. So when you come up to the rabbit and bite it, your poisonous saliva goes into the rabbit's circulatory system. It aids in things like digestion and immobilization. Immobilization meaning that you are dramatically slowing down the rabbit's movement or stopping it from moving altogether. And then your neurotoxins or nervous system toxins contribute towards paralysis, numbness, and tetany, which is characteristic of involuntary muscle contractions and spasms. Your cardiotoxins or your cardiovascular system toxins can do all sorts of things, including preventing heart muscle contraction. So in injecting that rabbit with your snake venom, you could also stop its heart. The hemotoxins or blood toxins contribute towards organ destruction of red blood cells, internal bleeding. The myotoxins or muscle toxins can also contribute towards death of skeletal muscle. And these are some of the many toxins that you possess as a poisonous snake. The other toxins I mentioned are some of the many toxins that are present in snake venom. Today we're going to talk about neurotoxins, which I find to be the most interesting. So in order to understand neurotoxins, we have to kind of understand some of the nervous system when it comes to muscle contraction. So in rabbits, as well as human beings, we have these nerve endings. And in the muscles, these things are called the neuromuscular junction. So these nerve endings right here transmit signals, and these signals tell the body to contract a muscle. In order to transmit these signals, these electrical impulses run down these nerve endings. They're called action potentials. And these action potentials move these sacs or vesicles full of this compound called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is released across this thing called a synapse. This is just the gap between nerve endings. And this molecule transmits the signal that the muscle needs to contract. And it transmits the signal by moving through the synapse and binding to these things called receptors. Once it binds to the receptor, you can think of a green light turning on, and another action potential goes down the other nerve ending and contributes towards a muscle contraction. Now, when acetylcholine is released, it needs to be broken down, because if it's not broken down, it will cause all sorts of involuntary muscle contractions that you don't want. So we have this molecule called acetylcholine esterase. Acetylcholine esterase eats the acetylcholine to prevent it from building up. It regulates the movement of acetylcholine. So this is just a very basic overview of how the muscles contract. So let's go back to the analogy of this rabbit that you are trying to kill as a snake. So you bite the rabbit, and outside of all the other toxins working, you have some neurotoxins moving through the blood of the rabbit you just bit. One of them is called fasciculin. We're at number 1 here. Fasciculin, this structure right here, destroys acetylcholine esterase. Now we just spoke about how acetylcholine esterase breaks down acetylcholine. Let's go back to that so you can have a better visual of what I'm talking about. So we mentioned right here that acetylcholine esterase breaks down acetylcholine. And if it doesn't break down acetylcholine, you'll have all kinds of buildup, which can cause involuntary muscle contractions. As a snake, this is what you want for your prey. And we just mentioned that this molecule fasciculin destroys acetylcholine esterase, which means that you have a buildup of acetylcholine leading to involuntary muscle contractions. Like we said earlier, tetany results from involuntary muscle contractions. That can result in death. And then we have dendrotoxins. Dendrotoxins block these things called ions from moving in and out of the nerve ending. Something I didn't talk about earlier was this, because it's a little complex, but think about ions as these charges that are moving in and out of a nerve ending. And these charges help power the opening and closing of the ends of these nerve endings to release acetylcholine. You can think of them like a garage door. You need power and electricity to turn the garage door system on to allow a car to go in and out. These ions, as they move across this nerve ending, allow acetylcholine to be released into the synapse. And this can also lead to involuntary muscle contraction and death. Then we have alpha neurotoxins. Now these are just some of the many neurotoxins available. This is what's called an acetylcholine mimic. When acetylcholine releases into the synapse, it binds to these receptors like a hand fits in a glove. It's very specific in its structure. This alpha neurotoxin has a part of it that can bind to that receptor like a hand in a glove, just like acetylcholine does. But instead of providing a consistent flow of acetylcholine for controlled muscle contraction, it slows down the acetylcholine release, which can lead to paralysis, numbness, and other things like that. And although this signal is moving through the nerve ending, the amount of acetylcholine that's needed is not being released, and it's slowing down the muscle movement. So let's come back to the snake analogy. Let's say you're the same snake moving through your environment. You happen to come across a human being who's going on a little bit of adventure, and you feel threatened by this human being. So you decide, hey, I'm gonna bite this person. So you slither up to him and you bite them on the ankle. If you're the human being in that situation, there's a couple things that are gonna happen. Depending on the severity of the bite, you go to the ER, you'll be given something called antivenom. Now, antivenom is interesting because antivenom is specific to the region that you're in, because antivenom can only work if it targets specific venom from specific types of snakes. In this case, crofab is an antivenom that is for North America. And this antivenom comes from rattlesnakes, copperheads, water moccasins, and I think one or two others. So if you're bitten in another place, you're going to be given another type of antivenom, because snake venom is incredibly diverse and complex. This venom is derived from sheep's blood. They inoculate a sheep with a non-lethal dose of certain types of rattlesnake venom, and it creates an immune response, and they spin the blood and they get from the serum this drug. So when you come in, you're going to be assessed to figure out how serious the bite is. This will determine how much crofab or antivenom you receive, and all it does is destroy the venom that's in your system. That's a very, very bare bones explanation. If you don't receive antivenom, if they don't have any, among other things, you might get neostigmine, which prevents paralysis and other neurological effects of the venom. In the 1980s, a landmark drug was created called captopril. Captopril was landmark because it was successful in lowering blood pressure in patients who had hypertension or high blood pressure. It was the first ACE inhibitor. I'm not going to talk about what an ACE inhibitor is. I'll post a little link to it if you're interested. These are a very efficient class of blood pressure medications. It was the first toxin that was turned into a therapeutic, and it was the first drug made from the venom of a snake. This section of the molecule is what is derived from the snake venom, and this comes from the South American pit viper. Captopril led to the synthesis and discovery of lisinopril, which is a widely used blood pressure medication today. And then there's another one, tirofiban. Tirofiban was another landmark drug that is a blood thinner used to treat acute coronary syndrome, which is a sudden blockage of blood vessels. And this is what's called an antiplatelet drug. Platelets are what clog the injuries and other things to keep yourself from bleeding too much. This destroys the platelets to allow the blood to thin out, in this case to release a blockage in the arteries. And this section is the one derived from the snake venom, and this is from the saw-scaled viper. And there are many other drugs that are derived from snake venom. And for me, this is just a reminder of how connected we are to nature, specifically when it comes to medications. I mentioned before, a lot of medication is based on natural products, whether it be from animals or from plants and things like that. So in summary, we gave the example of you being a snake and biting a rabbit. Your toxins contribute to paralysis, organ destruction, tetany, heart muscle contraction prevention, and all kinds of other stuff. And then we learned a little bit about the neuromuscular junction, these electrical currents that run through nerve endings that release this molecule, acetylcholine, that contribute to muscle contractions. Then we spoke about fasciculin, dendrotoxin, alpha neurotoxin. They contribute to tetany, involuntary muscle contraction, paralysis, and numbness. Then we learned about antivenom, the antivenom crofab that's specific to North America, that is derived from rattlesnakes, copperheads, water moccasins, that comes from sheep's blood. And neostigmine, which is a drug that's used in a lot of cases when antivenom isn't available to prevent some of the neurotoxic effect of snake venom. And lastly, we spoke about the landmark medications that were derived from snake venom. Captopril, the landmark blood pressure medication, tirofiban, the blood thinner, and there are many other drugs that are derived from snake venom. And this substance is poised to be used in a vast array of other medical conditions. So that's all I got. I hope you learned something new. I learned a lot doing the research for this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell your friends, and I'll be back soon with another video.